The sun hung low in the sky over the quaint seaside town of Willow Bay, casting a warm golden glow that made everything feel just a bit magical. Sarah, a young woman with dreams as big as the ocean, stood behind the counter of the small inn she managed. The inn, a charming place filled with antique furniture and the scent of fresh linens, had seen better days, but to Sarah it was her little slice of paradise. As she wiped her hands on her apron, the bell above the door jingled, and in walked Daniel. He was tall, with tousled hair and a bright smile that could light up any room. Sarah had seen him before, always just passing through, but today he seemed different. Today he had an air of determination about him. He said, leaning against the counter. Sarah felt a flutter in her stomach. There was something about Daniel that she found intriguing. Daniel hesitated, glancing around as if to make sure no one was listening. "I was wondering if you could let me book a room for the night, just for me." Her brows furrowed in confusion. "Why would you want to stay here? It's just a night." "Yeah, I know, but I really need some time to think, to clear my head," he replied, looking away, his gaze drifting to the waves crashing against the shore outside. She studied him for a moment. "I don't think I can do that, Daniel. You know we have a policy about single night stays." His face fell. "I get it, I do," Sarah replied softly, "but we can't make exceptions." Daniel nodded, trying to hide his disappointment with a brave smile, but Sarah could see it. In that moment, she felt a pang of regret, wishing she could help him, but business was business. There were rules in place for a reason. "All right, I understand," he said, pushing himself away from the counter. His shoulders slumped slightly as he headed for the door. Sarah watched him go, a feeling of sadness swelling in her chest. She wanted to reach out to tell him that sometimes rules could bend, but she didn't. As the sun dipped further, painting the sky in shades of pink and purple, Sarah continued her shift. The hours passed slowly, her mind lingering on Daniel's request. Who was he really, and why did he need that room so badly? These questions flitted around her mind like restless birds, but she shook them off, focusing on closing the inn for the night. Just as she was about to lock the door, a car pulled into the driveway. It was a sleek black vehicle that stood in stark contrast to the rustic charm of the inn. The engine purred to a stop, and out stepped a man in a sharp suit. His confident stride brought a sense of authority to the evening. He asked, his voice smooth yet commanding. "That's me," Sarah replied cautiously. He smiled, showing perfectly straight teeth. "My name is Mark Thompson." Sarah's eyes widened. "Bought it this morning. I've been looking for a place in Willow Bay," he explained, scanning the inn with apparent satisfaction, "and I must say it has great potential." As he spoke, her mind spun. Daniel wanted to stay here, but now, what did this mean for her, for the inn? Realization hit her hard. Wait a minute. "You're sure you bought this place?" "Absolutely," Mark replied, his tone confident. "I love the charm, the views." Her heart raced. "But what about the staff?" "Why?" he asked, a hint of amusement dancing in his voice. "I mean, yes, I love this place," she stammered, her mind racing. "But how can you just—" He raised a hand to stop her. "Relax, I don't plan to shake things up too much. I want to keep the spirit of this inn alive." Before she could respond, he continued, "Would you like a tour?" Sarah nodded slowly, feeling a mix of excitement and dread. "All right." As they walked through the inn, Mark pointed out things that could be improved, things Sarah had noticed but never had the means to change. "We could enhance the garden, maybe create a little outdoor cafe." His passion was infectious. With each suggestion, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Mark could help bring the inn back to life. It could be a new beginning, a chance to see her dreams come true, or at least to keep her little paradise afloat. She finally said, her curiosity bubbling over. "Why this place?" Mark's expression shifted, becoming more thoughtful. "I've been in the hotel business for years. I wanted a place where I could create something special, something more personal. I grew up visiting inns like this with my family." In that moment, Sarah understood. This was more than just a business deal for him. It was a dream, and maybe, just maybe, it was also her chance to revive her own. After the tour, they stood on the balcony looking out at the ocean. The waves sparkled under the moonlight, and Sarah felt a strange sense of kinship with this man. She hesitated. Mark raised an eyebrow. "He came in earlier today. He wanted a room for the night, but I turned him down," she admitted, biting her lip. Mark nodded solemnly. "Yes, I did. He's a friend of mine." Her heart skipped a beat. "Long story, but we've lost touch for a while," Mark said. "He's been going through a tough time. I tried to help him get back on his feet. That's actually why I bought the hotel, partly for him." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Partially." "I thought it might be a place where he could find solace, somewhere to restart." The weight of her earlier decision settled heavily on her shoulders. She had turned down the very thing that could have lifted Daniel out of darkness. Guilt surged through her. "I didn't know," she whispered, looking down at her hands. Mark turned to her, his gaze piercing yet understanding. "It's okay. You made a decision based on the rules of the inn, but it's not too late. If you want, we can reach out to him together. Maybe offer him a room anyway." Sarah felt a rush of hope. He smiled, the warmth in his eyes melting the tension in her chest. People change. As they walked back inside, Sarah made a decision. She wanted to be part of something bigger. She wanted to help Daniel. Maybe this was the moment to let go of the strict rules that had held her back and reach out to someone who needed her. Mark called Daniel, and after a few rings, he picked up. "Daniel, hey." "It's Mark," he said, his voice bursting with enthusiasm. "I'm standing here with Sarah. Yeah, I think it could be good for you." Fresh start, Mark encouraged. Nope, just come back to the inn, we're rooting for you, Mark said, glancing over at Sarah, his eyes gleaming with hope. We'll be waiting, Sarah added, warmth flooding her heart. The door swung open a little while later and in walked Daniel. He looked surprised, a mix of confusion and relief washing over his face. Mark stepped forward, his hand extended. We wanted to help you. Daniel's expression shifted, vulnerability creeping in. Really? Of course, Mark said, the energy in the room shifted from tense to hopeful. You're not alone in this. Sarah watched Daniel's face soften, his shoulders releasing tension. I thought I'd lost everything. I didn't think I'd ever have a place to stay. We're just getting started, Sarah said, her heart swelling. As the three of them stood together, a new sense of purpose enveloped the inn. The struggles and difficulties faded into the background. Here, beneath the glow of the moonlight, they found a shared mission, to rebuild, to dream, and to support one another. That night, as waves crashed gently against the shore, stories floated through the air, laughter mingling with the sounds of the ocean. Sarah felt a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in a long time. A promise of renewal lingered in the air. And as Daniel settled into his room, he finally began to realize that sometimes, to find oneself, all it took was a little nudge from fate. Storm had rolled in unexpectedly, dark clouds swallowing the sun as the rain poured down in heavy sheets. Inside the quaint hotel nestled along the shore, Sarah stood behind the front desk, her heart heavy with unease. Each thunderclap echoed through the old building, rattling her nerves. She could hear the distant crashing of waves, chaotic and wild, mirroring her own thoughts. Just as she thought the weather couldn't get any worse, the door swung open, allowing a gust of wind to rush in, bringing with it a soaked figure. It was Daniel, his hair plastered to his forehead and his shirt clinging to him like a second skin. There was a sense of desperation in his eyes that made Sarah's heart skip a beat. "Sarah, I need your help," he shouted over the roar of the storm, nearly breathless. She turned, wiping her hands on the damp apron around her waist. The concern in her voice was genuine, but so was the hesitation she felt. He had always been the enigmatic stranger passing through, his charming smile and easy laughter a stark contrast to the weight he seemed to carry. "I need to book a room for the night," he said urgently, shaking water from his hair. Her mind raced. The hotel had a strict policy against last-minute single-night stays for guests. The rule meant to protect her business, a rule she had upheld fiercely. "I'm sorry, Daniel, you know we can't do that. We have a minimum 2-night stay." Disappointment washed over his face, and for a moment Sarah felt the world narrow down to just the two of them, the pounding rain fading into the background. "Please, Sarah, I really need a place to stay." She pressed gently, searching his eyes for the answer. He hesitated, eyes darting around the lobby as if he were searching for a lifeline. "It's complicated," he stammered, "but I'm in a tough spot." Her heart ached for him, yet the rules were the rules. The look of defeat that crossed his face shattered her resolve. He turned away, shoulders slumping, and for a fleeting moment Sarah wanted to call him back to tell him she'd changed her mind, but she didn't. Instead, she watched him disappear into the storm, feeling a pang of guilt settle deep in her chest. Hours passed. The rain beat down relentlessly, and Sarah kept herself busy, but the image of Daniel lingered in her mind. What was he going through? Why did he need a place to stay so desperately? She couldn't shake the feeling that she had let him down, but rules were meant to keep things in order. As the night wore on and the storm finally began to ease, a luxury car pulled up outside. With headlights slicing through the darkness, a sharply dressed man stepped out, looking out of place in the cozy little inn. He strode toward the entrance, confidently pushing the door open. "Good evening, I'm here to check in," he announced, a smile spreading across his face. Welcome," Sarah replied, taken aback by his charisma. "I'm afraid we're fully booked tonight, but I can offer some recommendations," he cut her off, a glimmer of mischief in his eyes. "Actually, I'm not here to book a room," her breath caught. "I bought the entire place this morning," he reiterated, his demeanor warm yet authoritative. "I must say I love the charm of the building." He turned abruptly, gesturing toward the windows where glimpses of the turbulent sea could be seen in the dim light. She blinked, trying to absorb this unexpected news. "You bought the hotel, that's right, and I'm here to get started on some exciting plans," he said, his enthusiasm infectious. "I believe this place has incredible potential." As he spoke, her mind flickered back to Daniel. It felt surreal. This man standing before her held the keys not just to the hotel, but perhaps to a new beginning too. "What does that mean for the staff?" she asked, anxiety creeping in. "Oh, I'd definitely like you to stay on," he replied, his smile reassuring. "You know this place better than anyone. Your input is invaluable." Relief washed over her, mixed with a renewed sense of purpose. Perhaps with Mark's investment, she could finally bring the necessary changes to the hotel. The thought sparked a flicker of excitement within her. As they walked through the lobby, discussing ideas and visions for the future, the phone rang loudly, breaking their conversation. Sarah rushed to the desk, eager to answer it. "Hello, this is Sarah," she said. "Sarah, it's Daniel," his voice came through, sounding worn and defeated. Her heart raced. "Just outside the hotel. I just drove around for a bit, trying to clear my head, but I was hoping to talk to you." She turned to look at Mark, who was watching her intently, the thrill of curiosity painted on his face. Yes, come inside, please. Minutes felt like hours as she waited, her heart pounding. When Daniel stepped through the door, soaked and weary, the atmosphere shifted. Mark stepped forward, extending a hand. You must be Daniel, Daniel asked, confusion washing over his expression. Exactly, and I'd love to hear more about your vision for this place, the potential you see. Sarah here tells me you need help, Mark replied, his tone warm. The walls around Daniel seemed to crumble as he took in the scene. It was then that Sarah noticed the shadows under his eyes, the pain etched across his features. I came back hoping to find a little solace, he said quietly, uncertainty in his voice. Just today has been so chaotic. Mark nodded knowingly. We all have moments like that. I want to change this place, but I also want to help those who come here looking for something more. Sarah, we could create a safe haven. Looking at both men, Sarah felt a surge of inspiration. Yes, I believe we can, but it begins with each of us finding our own way first. Daniel glanced between them, hope flickering in his eyes. You really think so? Yes, because we're here together now. Life sometimes throws us curveballs, but this could be your chance, she said firmly. We'll make this place not just a hotel, but a community. We'll help each other. The weight in Daniel's shoulders seemed to lift at her words. He took a deep breath and nodded slowly. Okay, I want to help. Mark clapped his hands together. Great, let's brainstorm ideas and Sarah can share her thoughts on how we can improve this place. You could help with the landscaping, the garden, bring in that sense of calm we need, and I'll focus on the renovations. As they huddled together, energy filling the room, laughter began to bubble up. Ideas sparked and flew through the air like fireflies on a summer night. They outlined plans from room redesigns to community events, all while the storm outside began to dissipate. Hours later, the rain had turned into a gentle drizzle, and the tension that had once hung in the air had shifted to optimism. Together, they were creating a vision, a future that was brighter than either one had seen alone. Days turned into weeks, and with Mark's investment, changes began to take shape. New paint, brighter lights, and a renewed spirit filled the hotel. Sarah and Daniel found themselves working side by side, sharing their hopes and struggles as they toiled to make the inn a welcoming sanctuary. Every evening, they would sit on the balcony and talk about their dreams. Daniel slowly opened up about his past, revealing the weight he had carried for so long. Sarah listened, feeling honored that he trusted her with his story. In turn, she shared her desire to turn the inn into a retreat for those needing refuge. The bond between them deepened, woven together by shared dreams and the kindness of a new beginning. With each passing day, the hotel came alive not just with renovations, but with laughter, friendships, and a sense of community. Then one evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Sarah found herself standing on the balcony, lost in thought. Daniel joined her, an easy grin lifting his features. He asked, leaning against the railing. It feels unreal, she replied. Thanks to you, he said softly, glancing at her with admiration. You believed in me when I felt lost. She met his gaze, her heart fluttering. We did this together. In that moment, underneath the vast expanse of the starry sky, they stood together, two souls once lost, now intertwined in purpose and hope. The hotel had turned into more than just a place to stay. It had transformed into a home, a community where dreams could grow and flourish. It was no longer just a hotel. It was their shared sanctuary, a promising new chapter waiting to be written. And as the soft sounds of laughter floated through the air, they knew this was just the beginning. The rain hammered against the windows of the old hotel, a steady rhythm that matched the anxious beating of Sarah's heart. The lobby, usually warm and inviting, felt cold and empty today. A storm had rolled in, casting shadows that danced around the room. She wiped her hands, nervousness settling in. The small seaside hotel had seen better days, but it was her world, a haven where each creaking floorboard held a memory. Just as she began to settle into the rhythm of the evening, the door swung open with a loud creak. In walked Daniel, drenched from head to toe, his hair sticking to his forehead, the light from the lobby illuminating the worry lines etched on his face. For a moment, the storm faded as the tension between them sparked like electricity in the air. He exclaimed, shaking off water like a dog. Her heart raced. There was a desperation in his voice that sent alarm bells ringing in her mind. His eyes searched hers, pleading, I need a room for the night, just one night. Sarah felt a moment of hesitance. Their hotel had a strict policy, no single-night stays. It was the rule she had upheld fiercely, like a shield against chaos. I'm sorry, Daniel, you know the policy. His shoulders slumped, disappointment flaring in his eyes, but I really need this. She wanted to help. He had this way of making her feel like they were the only two people in the world. But the responsibilities of managing the hotel weighed heavily on her. I really can't break the rules, she replied softly, turning her gaze to the ground. Daniel took a step back, processing her refusal. Fine, just. The words came out clipped and harsh, and before she could say anything more, he turned and walked back into the rain, swallowed by the shadows. The door closed with a soft click, and silence settled over the hotel once more. A knot tightened in Sarah's chest. She had known Daniel for a while now, always passing through the hotel with that charming smile. He was often lost in thought, seemingly wandering through life with no clear direction. She wished she could have done something, but policies were policies. Hours slipped by like the rain streaming down the windows. The storm raged on, and Sarah's mind began to churn with thoughts of Daniel. What was happening to him out there in the storm? Why had he been so desperate for a room? It was troubling. Wrapped in her thoughts, she barely noticed when the bell above the entrance jingled again. The storm had calmed slightly, but the night was still heavy and dark. A well-dressed man in his 30s stepped in, his tailored suit contrasting sharply against the cozy, slightly shabby decor of the hotel. He announced, his voice cheerful and brimming with confidence. Sarah replied, blinking at him in surprise. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. Not temporarily, no, I'm not here to check in. Her heart skipped a beat. Wait, you bought it, this hotel, he said, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. It's a hidden gem, and I believe it has incredible potential. Questions swirled in her mind, but what does that mean for me? It means there's a chance to breathe new life into this place. I think you're doing a fantastic job, and I'd love to keep you on. Your knowledge could really help guide the vision I have for the hotel, he said, his tone warm and welcoming. As he spoke, Sarah felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Maybe this was the change the hotel needed. Maybe this was how things could finally turn around. I'm happy to hear that. I want to make this place shine again, she replied, feeling more bold than she had in weeks. Suddenly, the phone rang loudly, breaking the moment. Sarah dashed to grab the receiver. Came Daniel's voice, raw and shaky. Daniel, she asked, panic rising within her. Please, can I come in? Yes, come back, I'm here, she urged, looking back at Mark, who raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Minutes felt like hours as she waited, her heart pounding with anticipation. When Daniel stepped through the door again, he looked different, lost. She asked him cautiously, I thought about what you said, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, he admitted, his voice wavering as he clung to the doorframe. Daniel, this is Mark, he just bought the hotel, maybe he could help, Sarah suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. Daniel shot her a confused look, but before he could question it further, Mark stepped forward, extending his hand with a wide smile. Pleasure to meet you. Hi, Daniel managed, the tension between them palpable like a tightrope. I want to create something special here. A place where people feel welcomed, safe, and I think you can help with that, Mark continued, his enthusiasm contagious. Daniel shifted, uncertainty lingering in his eyes. Absolutely, everyone has something to offer. This isn't just a hotel, it's a community, Mark affirmed, hope flooding the room. As Daniel processed the idea, Sarah watched him closely. She could see the wheels turning in his mind, the quiet contemplation. The way he'd shut down earlier was still fresh in her memory, but this was different. Daniel finally spoke, addressing Mark with a hint of hesitance. What if I don't know where to begin? Mark's face lit up. Everyone starts somewhere. Sometimes it's about taking small steps, one foot in front of the other. Daniel's uncertainty softened, a flicker of hope breaking through his walls. Okay, Mark clapped his hands together, excitement radiating from him. Great, let's brainstorm some ideas. As they huddled together, a warm energy filled the room. Ideas flowed like the rain that had finally begun to soften outside. Sarah felt the tension lifting, the passion for change bringing them closer together. Days slipped into weeks, and the hotel began to transform before their very eyes. Mark's vision for the place found its footing. They painted walls, updated facilities, and even brought in local artists to create a vibrant atmosphere. Daniel blossomed alongside the renovations, diving into every project with enthusiasm. He helped with landscaping, planting flowers with care, and bringing life back to the garden that had long been forgotten. As they worked side by side, Sarah noticed something shifting between them. They shared laughter, late-night discussions about dreams, and those small moments that felt like building blocks for a friendship. She learned about Daniel's past, about the burdens he carried, and they found support in shared vulnerabilities. One evening, as they took a break, they stood on the balcony watching the sunset paint the sky with striking oranges and deep purples. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers. I can't believe how far we've come, Sarah said softly, glancing over at Daniel. His face was lit by the fading sunlight, and she could see the change in him, more alive, more hopeful. Yeah, it's amazing. I didn't think I could feel this way again, Daniel admitted, his voice steady. I owe you both a lot. More than that, you took a chance on yourself, Sarah encouraged, sincerity washing over her words. You're doing this. The atmosphere felt electric as their eyes met, and for a moment, the world around them faded away. She realized how much she had come to appreciate him, not just as a friend or a coworker, but as someone who had the power to inspire her. As the days turned into weeks, the hotel's rooms filled up with guests, and the community around them began to thrive again. Laughter echoed through the halls, a testament to the friendships being formed under the roof of the little seaside hotel. Then one day, everything shifted again. Mark came bursting through the door, his excitement bubbling over. Sarah asked, intrigued. Just secured a contract for a big event next month. His eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. Sarah replied, feeling anticipation swirling in her stomach. He chuckled, a gleam of mischief in his eyes. We'll need to get everything in top shape. Daniel stood back, absorbing their excitement but looking thoughtful. I think I'll step back for this. It sounds like a big deal. I don't want to mess it up. Sarah interjected, reaching out to him. This is our success. You're part of this. We can't do it without you. I just don't want to be the weak link, Daniel admitted, vulnerability creeping into his voice. Mark placed a reassuring hand on Daniel's shoulder. You're not a weak link, you're a crucial part of this team. We need your creativity. The words hung in the air, charged with the possibility of transformation. Daniel looked at them, his eyes searching theirs for encouragement. Okay, I can help. Renewed determination, they began to prepare for the retreat, diving into planning with fervor. Late nights turned into early mornings, filled with laughter and brainstorming sessions. The energy was magnetic, and slowly but surely the hotel took shape as the vibrant retreat it was meant to be. The event day arrived, and the sun shone brightly, illuminating the hotel like never before. Guests flooded in, filled with energy and anticipation as they entered the lobby, the atmosphere electric with excitement. Sarah, Daniel, and Mark stood together, watching as all their hard work came to life. They witnessed friendships blossoming, laughter echoing, and memories being formed all under their roof. Mark beamed, his eyes glimmering. Yeah, we really did, Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She shared a meaningful glance with Daniel, who looked different than when she had first met him, a man transformed, filled with purpose. In that moment, all their struggles, doubts, and fears seemed to melt away. The hotel had become a sanctuary, a community where people could regroup and find themselves. As the sun set, casting golden light across the room, they raised drinks in a toast, celebrating not only the success of the retreat, but the journey they had taken together. To new beginnings, Mark proclaimed, his voice strong. To second chances, Sarah echoed, her heart swelling with emotion. And to friendships forged in storms, Daniel added, a hint of a smile breaking through his earlier doubts. In that moment, Sarah felt invincible. Together, they had claimed this space a sanctuary of hope, transformation, and shared dreams. And as the night deepened, they knew that this was just the beginning of an incredible adventure, one where they could continue to lift each other up and create a community filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. The rain pounded against the windows of the small seaside hotel, each drop sounding like a tiny drumbeat in the quiet lobby. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Sarah stood behind the front desk, wiping her hands on her apron, her mind racing with the day's challenges. The charming inn had seen better days. The peeling paint, worn furniture, and faded curtains whispered stories of a time when it thrived. Now it felt like a relic clinging to the past. Just as she was about to settle into her routine, the wooden door creaked open, awakening a gust of wind and a soaked figure. It was Daniel, his tousled hair drenched, clothes clinging to his frame as he stepped inside, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced with urgency. He gasped, shaking rain off like a dog. Her pulse quickened at the desperation in his voice. I need a room for the night, he blurted out, eyes wide and pleading. Just one night. She hesitated, her heart torn. It was the hotel's policy, a strict rule against single-night stays. It was a guideline she had come to depend on, a way to keep things organized and manageable in an otherwise chaotic environment. I'm really sorry, Daniel, but I can't do that. His face fell, disappointment washing over him like the rain outside. But I really need it, Sarah. I get it, but the words hung in the air, heavy and painful. She could feel his need, but rules were rules. They existed to maintain order, to protect the fragile balance of her world. With a defeated sigh, he stepped back, rain-soaked and heartbroken. Fine, just. The door closed softly behind him, and she felt a rush of regret cutting through her. Hours passed, the storm raging on outside, but inside the hotel, the chill did not fade. Each creak of the building echoed loudly in the silence. Sarah fought against her guilt, replaying the moment in her mind, wishing she had made a different choice. She knew Daniel had always been a wanderer, passing through their lives with ease, but today he had desperately needed something more, a lifeline, and she denied him. Suddenly, the bell above the entrance jangled again, cutting through her thoughts. A man stepped into the lobby, confident, sharply dressed, and exuding an energy that felt almost electric. His dark hair was neatly styled, and he carried himself with an air of authority. Good evening, I'm here to check in, he declared, his voice booming with enthusiasm. She hesitated, glancing around the lobby, confusion swirling in her mind. The man chuckled, a smile dancing on his lips. Not quite. Her jaw dropped. He replied, his excitement palpable. Sarah blinked, trying to process this news. But what does that mean for me? Mark said, his enthusiasm infectious. I want to breathe new life into this place, and I'd love to work with you. As he spoke, a spark ignited in her chest. Could this be the change the hotel desperately needed? Fresh ideas, renewed hope, she asked, a sense of cautious optimism creeping into her voice. He replied, leaning on the desk, his gaze steady and encouraging. We can transform this place into something extraordinary together. Before she could respond, the phone rang, jolting her back to reality. She answered, her voice trembling slightly. It was Daniel, his voice heavy and uncertain. She straightened, her heart racing at the thought of seeing him again. I'm just outside the hotel. I need to explain. Of course, she exclaimed, looking over at Mark, who raised an eyebrow, curiosity mixing with concern. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, but finally the door swung open, revealing Daniel once more. This time his eyes held a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. he asked, though the glimmer of hope in his voice was faint. "Of course, I'm glad you came back," she said, trying to reassure him. Mark stepped forward, extending a hand. "Hi, I'm Mark, the new owner." Daniel's expression shifted from confusion to shock. "That's right, and this place has so much potential. I want to restore it to its former glory," Mark replied, his energy infectious. Daniel hesitated, uncertain for a moment, then he spoke, his voice low. "I don't know, Mark nodded, a warm understanding in his eyes. "We all have moments of doubt, but change brings opportunity." Sarah watched Daniel's face carefully. For the first time, she noticed how the lines of worry were etched deeply into his features, but now, as he absorbed Mark's words, she saw a flicker of light in his eyes. "Okay, I'm willing to give it a shot," Daniel finally said, his voice steadying. "Neither can I," Mark replied, throwing an arm around Daniel's shoulders. "But working together, I think we can create something special." Something shifted in the room as the three of them stood there, united by a common purpose. They began brainstorming ideas, and with each suggestion, the energy grew, bouncing off the walls like sunlight breaking through clouds. Days turned into weeks, and the hotel slowly began to transform. Barnacles of neglect fell away, revealing the beauty hidden beneath. Mark's vision unfolded, guided by Sarah's knowledge and Daniel's creativity. They painted walls, fixed broken shutters, and replaced worn rugs with vibrant ones that spoke of new beginnings. Daniel blossomed in this environment, slowly shedding the weight of his past. He brought life to the garden, planting flowers and shrubs that added color and vibrancy to the space. His confidence gradually returned, and each day he seemed more at home. One evening, as they washed away the day's work, they stood in the garden, surrounded by the beauty of their creations. The air was fragrant with blooming flowers, and the sun dipped low in the sky, casting golden light across the hotel. Sarah said, gazing around in awe. "It's incredible," Daniel replied, a smile breaking through his typically serious demeanor. Mark chimed in, joining their conversation. Their laughter echoed through the garden, a sound so bright it chased away the shadows that had lingered in Daniel's heart. But the clouds weren't done yet. The hotel's revival was just beginning, and sometimes you had to weather more storms to truly shine. One chilly evening, a heavy fog rolled in, draping the landscape in a ghostly white shroud. The hotel stood tall and proud, lights glowing softly against the dark sky. Sarah was at the front desk when the bell chimed, revealing a familiar figure. She exclaimed, seeing his disheveled appearance. He stepped closer, pulling his jacket tighter around him. "I need to talk to you." Of course, she could feel the tension in his voice, fraying like thread. Once outside, the chill wrapped around them as they walked amidst the fragrant flowers. She asked, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. I've been thinking a lot lately," he began, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. "I don't know if I can do this. What if I let you down?" Her heart squeezed. "Daniel, you've come so far, you're a part of this team. We all have our doubts, but look at what we've accomplished together. You've got talent." "But my past," he said, falling quiet, "it haunts me." The vulnerability in his voice struck deep. "Every single person has a past. What matters is what we do moving forward. You belong here." He met her gaze, searching for something reassurance, perhaps. "I want to believe that. Then let's keep going. We're all in this together." "Always," she insisted, feeling the weight of his fear slowly lifting. A flicker of determination ignited in Daniel's eyes, and she smiled, relieved. "Thanks, Sarah, I needed that," he finally admitted, a hint of warmth breaking through his uncertainty. As they returned to the main building, tentative yet resolute, the tension between them shifted, cementing their bond. The months passed, each day bringing its own challenges. They fought through the storms together, united in the struggle for success. Each morning they gathered to discuss plans and ideas. Each evening they worked side by side, laughter mingling with the sound of hammers and paintbrushes. During one of those evenings, Sarah found herself immersed in conversation with Mark, discussing the upcoming event they had planned for the hotel, a community gathering meant to bring the locals together and showcase their hard work. "I can't believe how far we've come," she said, looking around at the bustling hotel. "It's more than just a hotel now," he replied, his voice filled with admiration. "It's a beacon of hope." Just then Daniel appeared, his face glowing with excitement. "You guys won't believe it. I think we've hit the jackpot with the marketing strategy for the event." Mark and Sarah exchanged glances, their smiles broadening. Sarah exclaimed, her heart swelling with pride for him. "Right, I'll keep that in mind," Daniel chuckled, clearly feeling the support surrounding him. Days of preparation turned into sleepless nights, excitement bubbling in the air. The murals in the garden blossomed to life, and the courtyard filled with laughter and conversation. As the event day approached, anticipation ran high. Finally, the day arrived, a clear blue sky hanging over the hotel like a bright promise. Guests started to flow in, their laughter drowning out any lingering anxiety. Sarah could hardly believe her eyes. Locals mingled with tourists, exchanging stories and creating new memories. The atmosphere pulsed with vibrant energy. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the festivities, Sarah took a moment to step back, absorbing it all. She found Daniel and Mark, both standing nearby, animatedly discussing the event. "There you are." "I was looking for you," Mark called out, waving her over. She shouted over the noise, her heart racing with joy. We did it, Daniel added, his excitement radiating from him. We did it together, Mark said, the pride in his voice evident. As the night continued, laughter echoed through the hallways and music filled the air. Sarah felt a connection to every person who passed her by, a wave of gratitude swelling within her. In this moment, they weren't just a hotel team, they were a family, a community united in their journey. Later, as the last of the guests departed, Sarah stepped out into the quiet night, breathing deeply. The stars twinkled above, a blanket of shimmering hope. "Hey," Daniel said, joining her, looking contemplative. "Hey," she replied, her heart fluttering at the sight of him. "I just wanted to thank you for believing in me," he said, his voice sincere and steady. "Believe it or not, it's easy to believe in someone as talented as you," she replied, her eyes locking onto his. He smiled slowly, a warmth spreading across his face. As they stood together, the weight of the past finally began to lift, replaced by the promise of the future. They were resilient, forged in the fires of uncertainty, and now they had found a reason to shine. The hotel, once merely a refuge for travelers, had transformed into a sanctuary of hope, dreams realized, and friendships forged in the most unexpected ways. And together they were ready to embrace whatever came next. Life had a rhythm of its own, and together they would dance to it, unafraid of the storms that lay ahead. The storm hit Willow Creek just as the sun began to set, dark clouds rolling in like an army of shadows. Rain poured down, lashing against the windows of the old hotel, turning the reflections in the glass into a blurry, distorted mess. Inside, Sarah stood behind the reception desk, her thoughts tangled like the branches of a gnarled tree. The weight of the day pressed on her shoulders. The small hotel was falling apart, its charm long lost amidst the peeling paint and carpet stains. Sarah had dedicated herself to it, pouring her heart into managing the place, but no matter how much effort she put in, it always seemed just out of reach. That evening, she was lost in the responsibilities that awaited her when the hotel's front door swung open with a loud creak, and walked a figure she recognized immediately: Daniel. He was soaked to the bone, hair plastered to his forehead, and his clothes hung heavy on him. But it wasn't just the water that weighed him down, it was the expression on his face. He looked anxious, desperate even. He called out, urgency pouring from him. Her heart raced. She leaned over the desk, concern flooding her. "I need a room for the night, just one night, I'll pay whatever you need," he said, his voice a frantic whisper. But Sarah hesitated. The hotel's policy against single-night bookings was etched in stone. It was a rule she had clung to like a lifeline. "I'm really sorry, Daniel, but I can't do that." His face fell, disappointment flickering in his eyes. "But I need this." She could feel the weight of his plea, but the guilt of breaking a rule she had upheld for so long pushed her away. "I understand, but it's complicated." Complicated. As his words hung in the air, Sarah felt something shift. She wanted to help him. He had always been kind, charming in his own way, but she stayed firm, gripping the edge of the desk. After a tense moment, he turned away, shoulders heavy with defeat. "Fine." He left as abruptly as he had entered, leaving Sarah staring at the closed door, a pit of regret forming in her stomach. As the rain battered down, she turned back to the desk, drowning out the sound of the storm. The minutes turned to hours, and Daniel's desperate plea echoed in her mind. What had she done? She wished she could have given him that room, wished she could have eased whatever he was going through, but it was too late now. Finally, just as the night poured on, a luxury car pulled up to the hotel, cutting through the storm with its sleek design. The headlights flickered as the engine purred to a stop. Out stepped an impeccably dressed man, radiating confidence like a beacon in the rain. He strode into the hotel, shaking off droplets like a man on a mission. He said, bright and fervent. Sarah blinked in surprise. "I'm afraid we're fully booked," she said, confusion creasing her forehead. He laughed lightly, tilting his head slightly. "Not exactly," her jaw dropped, eyes widening in disbelief. "Wait," he replied, his enthusiasm radiating like the warmth of a campfire. "I believe this place has tremendous potential." The weight of his words wrapped around her mind, spinning her thoughts. This stranger was the new owner. What did that mean for her? What did it mean for the hotel? But what about the staff? She felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. Mark stepped closer, a glimmer in his eye. "I want you to stay on." Flickered inside her. "Really? Absolutely. I want to bring this place back to life. With your knowledge and my vision, I believe we can turn it into something remarkable," he said, excitement bubbling over. Before Sarah could respond, a ringtone sliced through the air like a knife. She dashed to answer the phone. "Sarah, it's Daniel." His voice sounded different, fragile, uncertain. Her heart leapt, just outside the hotel. "Of course," she urged, glancing at Mark, who wore a curious expression. Moments later, the door opened, revealing Daniel once again, drenched and distressed. "I shouldn't have left," he said, stepping inside. She exclaimed, moving to his side. "I need to," he paused, glancing at Mark. Mark tilted his head, intrigued. "I'm Mark, the new owner," he introduced himself, extending a hand. Daniel hesitated, then shook it. "Nice to meet you. I might have been too quick to walk out earlier." "My door is always open," Mark said warmly. "This place could be a fresh start for all of us." Daniel looked uncertain. "Whatever you need, a room, a conversation, or just a place to breathe," Mark replied, sincerity in his voice. "This hotel is about more than just guests." As Sarah stood between the two men, she felt a shift in the air. There was something about Daniel's vulnerability, combined with Mark's determination, that ignited a spark of hope within her. "You know, we could work together," she said softly, her heart urging her to act with compassion. "I'd like that," Daniel finally said, though his uncertainty still lingered. Mark exclaimed, his enthusiasm infectious. Days turned into weeks, and the hotel transformed under their collective vision. Mark brought fresh ideas, his passion illuminating every corner. With Sarah's intimate knowledge of the place and Daniel's creative spark, the three formed a bond that felt almost familial. They painted neglected walls, fixed leaky faucets, and replanted the garden, which now began to bloom in vibrant colors. The effort felt exhilarating, each day bursting with possibility. And as they worked, Sarah noticed a change within Daniel. Slowly, the shadows that had once clung to him began to lift. One sunny afternoon, while planting flowers in the garden, Daniel turned to her. "You know, I really thought I was at my lowest point when I walked in here that night." He gestured to their surroundings, the sun glinting off the colorful blooms. Sarah smiled. "That's what this place is about." They shared a moment, two souls realizing the strength they found in one another. But as they all discovered, change often brings its own challenges. One evening, as dark clouds rolled in, Mark burst into the hotel, excitement radiating off him. He exclaimed, "I just secured a contract for a big weekend event." Sarah replied, her heart racing at the prospect. Daniel stood back, his demeanor shifting. "That sounds great, but what if I'm not ready for something this big?" Mark stepped closer. "You can do this, Daniel, but you need to believe in yourself. You've come so far already." Daniel hesitated, uncertainty creeping back in. "I just don't want to hold anyone back." Sarah placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone in this, we're a team." Taking a deep breath, Daniel nodded, slowly finding his footing again. "Okay." As the event approached, excitement swirled around the hotel, electric and alive. The team poured everything into preparations, decorating, organizing, contacting local vendors. The energy was infectious, each little success fueling the momentum. On the evening of the event, guests began to arrive. The atmosphere pulsed with energy, laughter mixing with the sound of music. Sarah looked around, stunned by the transformation. This wasn't just a hotel anymore. It was a home, a gathering place, a community celebrating together. In the midst of all the chaos, she caught sight of Daniel. He moved with a new confidence, greeting guests, sharing stories, and spreading joy. It was as if he had finally stepped into himself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the festivities, Sarah felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. They had created something extraordinary together, a sanctuary where people felt welcome and alive. Later that night, after the guests had left and the last of the laughter had faded, the three of them stood together outside the hotel, bathed in starlight. "I can't believe we did it," Sarah said, her voice barely a bubble. Mark echoed, pride radiating off him. Daniel stood slightly apart from the two, a reflective look in his eyes. "I never thought I could feel this way again. I owe you both everything." "No, you believed in yourself," Sarah insisted, feeling the bond that had formed between them. As they stood there, united under the stars, hope glimmered like the lights twinkling in the distance. The night air was filled with possibilities, and Sarah knew they had only scratched the surface. But in that moment, as laughter danced on the breeze, they understood that life would always throw storms their way. They would weather them together, finding strength in one another, building a future where dreams thrived. The pathway ahead was still uncertain, but they were no longer just a hotel team. They were a family, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead, united by the bonds of friendship and a shared vision for the future. With hearts full of hope, they knew that together they could face anything. The storm hit Willow Creek in the early evening, sending sheets of rain pouring down and turning the street into a glistening river. In the small seaside hotel, Sarah stood behind the front desk, nervously tapping a pen against the counter. Each tick echoed through the otherwise quiet lobby. The air was thick with worry as the hotel struggled under the weight of fading guests and unpaid bills. She loved this place, but every day felt like a new battle. Just as she began to sink into her thoughts, the bell above the entrance jingled, jolting her from her reverie. In walked a figure she recognized immediately: Daniel. His clothes clung to him, soaked and heavy, his hair a wild mess from the rain. He looked frazzled and desperate, and her heart twisted at the sight. "Sarah," he called out, urgency in his voice. She asked, her instinct kicking in. "I need a room for the night," he said, nearly breathless. Just one night. A wave of panic washed over her. The hotel had a strict policy: no single-night stays during peak season. She really believed it was a rule for a reason, to keep things stable and predictable. "I'm really sorry, Daniel," she said, trying to soften the blow. "I can't do that. Please, you don't understand. I really need this," he pleaded, his vulnerability evident. He was usually so carefree, so confident. Seeing him like this tugged at her heartstrings. "I understand you're going through something, but I can't just bend the rules," she replied, voice firm but her heart wavering. "Forget it," he said, bitterness dripping from his tone. He turned, the door swinging closed behind him with a soft click. A knot twisted in her stomach. Regret flooded her. Why hadn't she just trusted her instincts? Hours melted into a long, sleepless night. The rain continued to pelt against the windows, drowning her thoughts. Daniel's face haunted her, the way his smile had faltered, the desperate look in his eyes. She clutched the pen harder, feeling the need to somehow fix what she had broken. But what could she do now? The rules were the rules. Finally, around midnight, a luxury car pulled into the gravel lot, headlights glistening through the rain. A tall man in a crisp suit stepped out, exuding confidence as he approached the entrance. Sarah's heart raced. She hadn't expected any guests tonight. He chimed as he walked through the door, shaking off raindrops. "I'm afraid we're fully booked," she said, her heart sinking, unsure why he would even try to stay on such a night. "Not quite. My name is Mark Thompson. I bought this hotel this morning," he said, a broad grin crossing his face. The word escaped her lips in disbelief. "You bought it?" "Yes." "I think this place has so much potential. I'm excited to get started," he said, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Her brain began to churn, trying to understand the implications. "But what about the staff?" she asked, the questions spilling out. "Don't worry, I want you to stay on. You know this place inside out. Your knowledge is essential," he said, gesturing to the area around them. Hope flickered within her. Perhaps this was the change they all needed. "Are you sure?" "I'm absolutely sure." "I believe we can turn this hotel into a destination," he replied earnestly. Just then the phone rang, startling her. She answered. "Sarah, it's Daniel." His voice came through, a mix of frustration and vulnerability. Her heart leaped into her throat. "Daniel, where?" "I'm just outside the hotel," he said, tone strained. "Yes," she urged, glancing at Mark, whose expression had morphed into curiosity. Moments felt like an eternity, but moments later, the door opened to reveal Daniel, looking disheveled and worn. He stepped in, shaking rain from his clothes. "Sarah," he breathed, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry I came at such a bad time." "Of course," she said, stepping closer. "I made a decision tonight. I need a place to stay, not just for the night. I need somewhere to reset my life," he admitted, vulnerable and raw. Mark perked up, stepping forward. "You're in luck. I just purchased the hotel and I'm looking for opportunities to create a community here." Daniel looked between them, uncertainty flickering across his face. "Really? Absolutely. We could be a team," Sarah assured him, relief flooding her. For the first time, Daniel's guarded expression softened, the weight of his troubles visibly lifting. As they gathered in the dimly lit lobby, a new energy pulsed through the room. Daniel, with a flicker of hope in his eyes, was ready to embrace the unknown. Weeks passed and the hotel began to transform. Mark threw himself into revitalizing the place, guided by Sarah's insights and energizing Daniel's creativity. They painted walls, refurbished bedrooms, and even put in a small cafe that filled the lobby with the warm scents of coffee and pastries. Each day brought new laughter, new challenges, and a growing bond between the three of them. At first, Sarah had worried about Daniel's stability, but with each passing week, he appeared more confident. He managed the cafe with a cheerful demeanor, engaging guests with stories of his own. One late afternoon, while organizing the garden, Daniel turned to Sarah. "I didn't think I could bounce back like this. I feel." Sarah smiled, feeling a sense of pride for her friend. As the sun set behind the hotel, painting the sky in brilliant hues, they often took moments to just breathe and appreciate how far they had come together. They were transforming not only a hotel, but the lives of everyone who walked through the door. The storm clouds of Daniel's past seemed to linger, but the sun had begun to shine on the present. Daniel had embraced his role, but sometimes old wounds would surface. One evening, as they sat around a table in the cafe, he suddenly fell silent. Sarah asked, sensing a heaviness in the air. "I'm just worried," he finally admitted, picking at his coffee cup. "What if I'm not enough?" Mark, ever perceptive, leaned in closer. "You're fighting your own battles, but we're all in this together. It's okay to falter." The vulnerability in Daniel's eyes mirrored his past struggles. That night, as the cafe closed and the moonlight illuminated the hotel, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty that lay ahead. Daniel was trying to rebuild, but he was grappling with much deeper issues than she could see. But with time, they faced more than just the shadows of their worries. The hotel began to attract visitors, bustling with life, laughter, and stories. On weekends, the cafe filled with guests indulging in comforting food, and as the vibrant atmosphere grew, so did Daniel's confidence. He began to share his journey with guests, often speaking of his trials and triumphs. But just as everything seemed to be settling into a comfortable rhythm, news broke about the city cutting funding for the arts, and the local community center was at risk of shutting down. Sarah felt the weight of every change, every challenge pressing harder. They gathered in the lobby that evening, unease hanging like a cloud. "We'll have to act quickly," Mark said, looking at Sarah and Daniel, determination etched in his features. Daniel's brow furrowed, uncertainty creeping in again. "How? It's too big." Sarah placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder, strength building within her. "We're all stronger together. We can host fundraisers, outdoor events, art shows." Mark nodded, enthusiasm bubbling over. "And we can offer the hotel as a temporary venue while they get back on their feet. It'll pull people in." Slowly, Daniel began to warm to the idea, the flicker of hope igniting once more. Days turned into nights as they planned and organized. The hotel became a hub of creativity and collaboration. They pulled together art exhibits and local talent shows, inviting the community to rally around a shared purpose. and as word spread, excitement bubbled in the air. When the event day finally arrived, the hotel was alive, packed with laughter, chatter, and warmth. The garden transformed into a celebration of art as local musicians played and artists displayed their work. The cafe became a hub of activity, serving food and drinks to a buzzing crowd. Sarah watched from a distance, her heart swelling with pride. Daniel moved confidently between guests, engaging in conversations, every ounce of doubt cast aside. As the sun set, casting a golden glow across the scene, Sarah found herself standing beside Mark. He asked, glancing at her. "Not just us," she replied, eyes sparkling. "Look at everyone, look at Daniel. We're all thriving," Mark responded, a sense of fulfillment in his tone. But as the night danced on, Sarah felt a twinge of worry nagging at her. Despite the successes, Daniel sometimes slipped into bouts of silence, shadows crossing his face. Just when everything seemed perfect, the storms sometimes felt as though they were waiting just beyond the horizon. Later that night, as guests began to depart and the excitement of the event began to fade, Sarah caught Daniel alone in the garden, his gaze lost in the stars. "Hey," she said softly, approaching him. He turned, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before quickly vanishing. "Yeah, just," she could sense the turmoil beneath his calm demeanor. Daniel sighed deeply, feeling the weight of the night. "I just don't want to let anyone down." The pause stretched on, and she could sense the walls he had built crumbling just a little. "You've really helped me believe that there's more beyond the struggles, but sometimes fear is normal, Daniel, but you're not alone anymore," she said, reaching out to clasp his hand. "This hotel became a family for all of us." He smiled, a hint of light breaking through his shadowed expression. "You're right." As the stars twinkled high above, they stood together, sharing a moment that felt like a promise to continue facing the storms, side by side. Days turned into weeks, and the hotel thrummed with life, a living entity filled with laughter, creativity, and resilience. Sarah found comfort in the routine and the community they had built together. But she also realized that the fight wasn't just about maintaining a hotel. It was about lifting each other up, learning to believe in themselves again. The old hotel had transformed into something more, a sanctuary for those seeking refuge from their storms, a celebration of friendship and change. Even Daniel stood tall, confidently taking on new challenges, embracing the community. One sunny afternoon, while tending to the garden, Sarah looked at Daniel, who was sharing stories with a couple of kids. She felt a wave of warmth wash over her. This was what she had always dreamed of, a community rooted in kindness, support, and growth. As the days rolled on, Sarah found herself reflecting on the journey they had taken. It all began with a single moment of hesitation, followed by connection, trust, and belief. Each of them, in their way, carried wounds from the past, but together they had found healing, purpose, and unity. And in that old hotel, as the waves crashed against the shore outside, they forged their own story, a tale of how love, friendship, and second chances could weave even the most fragmented lives into a beautiful tapestry. Together, they had weathered the storms, and together they would continue to rise, turning dreams into reality, one challenge at a time. The bell above the door jingled as Sarah wiped down the front desk of the old hotel, the sound echoing dimly against the faded walls. It was a quiet afternoon at the Willow Creek Hotel, and she had just finished arranging the fresh flowers in the lobby when she noticed a storm rolling in. The sun dipped behind dark clouds, casting a shadow over her little sanctuary. As she stared out the window, she saw a figure struggling against the wind, coat pulled tightly around him, fighting to stay upright. The door swung open, and in walked Daniel, his hair soaked, water streaming down his face. He looked frazzled and worn, far different from the charming man who had drifted in and out of her life over the last several weeks. He exclaimed, breathless. Her heart sank. "I need a room for the night, just one night," he said, desperation spilling from his voice. Her mind spun as she weighed his request. The hotel's policy was clear: no single-night bookings during peak season. It was a rule she had enforced without fail to maintain balance. "I'm really sorry, but I can't do that." He interrupted, frustration etched across his face. "But I really need this. I promise I'll pay you double or whatever you ask." She hesitated, torn between compassion and the rules. "I understand, but it's complicated." His expression fell, the light in his eyes dimming. "Fine, just forget it," he said, turning swiftly, the door slamming shut behind him. A wave of guilt washed over her, crashing against her resolve like the storm outside. What if he was going through something significant? What if she could have been his lifeline? But the rules had felt so solid, so necessary. Hours passed. The rain beat down heavily, and Sarah sat alone in the lobby, sipping coffee, her mind circling back to Daniel's desperate plea. The slap of his words lingered in the air, and every tick of the clock felt like a reminder of her decision. Moments turned into hours, and the darkness slowly enveloped the hotel. Just then the bell jingled again, pulling her from her thoughts. This time the tall figure that entered was sharply dressed, his tailored suit somehow melding well with the hotel's rustic charm. A confident smile brightened his face. He said, a cheerful tone cutting through the somber atmosphere. She blinked, wondering if he had braved the storm too. "I'm sorry, but we're fully booked tonight," Sarah said, instinctively sliding into her usual spiel. The man laughed, shaking his head with an air of confidence. Not for me. The words hung in the air like a cloud of disbelief. Bought it, this very hotel, he replied, enthusiasm radiating off him as he took a step closer to the desk. Sarah's heart raced with the sudden realization. What did this mean? But what about the management? I want you to stay on. I have big plans for this place, and your experience would be invaluable, Mark said, his gaze steady and inviting. Hope flickered within her. His voice tore through the heaviness surrounding her. Before she could absorb that information, the phone rang, startling her. She answered, her heart still distracted by Mark's words. Sarah, it's Daniel. His worried voice broke through, sounding more strained than before. She asked, her heartbeat racing at the thought of seeing him again. Just outside, I want to talk, he said, desperation weaving into his voice. Of course, she exclaimed, glancing at Mark, whose curiosity was unmistakable. The minutes crawled as she awaited Daniel's arrival. When the door finally swung open, he walked in, looking even more disheveled than earlier. I'm sorry, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. It's okay, she assured him, noting the tension in his shoulders. He took a deep breath. I was overwhelmed. His voice cracked, vulnerability oozing from his words. Mark stepped forward, his calm demeanor immediately apparent. Hey, I'm Mark. I just bought this hotel today, he said, extending a friendly hand. Daniel shook it, though confusion lingered on his face. Yep, and I want to create something special here, a real community. Daniel's eyes filled with uncertainty. Absolutely, we all have stories to tell, and I think yours could inspire others, Mark said, planting a seed of confidence. Sarah watched as a flicker of hope began to dance in Daniel's eyes again. Okay, I'll give it a shot, he said finally, determination beginning to override his uncertainty. With that, the three of them gathered, a new energy flowing between them. They began to brainstorm ideas, each person contributing to the vision of the hotel. It felt electric, as if they were on the brink of creating something remarkable. Days turned into weeks, and the hotel slowly transformed before their very eyes. Mark's ambitious plans integrated beautifully with Sarah's intimate knowledge of the space, and Daniel's creativity flowed like a rushing river. They painted walls, rewired the outdated systems, and updated the furnishings to breathe new life into the building. The once stagnant air turned vibrant, filled with laughter and hope. As the transformation continued, Sarah noticed something magical happening. Daniel began to blossom, stepping into his role with enthusiasm. He laughed more, engaged with guests, and shared his journey with anyone willing to listen. Sarah felt a wave of pride wash over her as she saw him grow. One sunny afternoon, while planting flowers in the hotel garden, Daniel turned to Sarah and said, "You know, I didn't think I could ever bounce back from where I was, but being here." "You're not alone in this," she replied, warmth spreading through her. Days faded into nights, and everyone settled into the routine they had created together. The hotel became a sanctuary for those seeking refuge, laughter filling the previously empty halls, yet shadows from the past still lingered in some corners. One night, while the rain poured outside like a symphony, Daniel sat at the bar nursing a drink, a contemplative look on his face. "Hey, Sarah," he called. She walked over, curious about the expression shadowing his features. He sighed, eyes gazing down into his glass. "I'm scared. What if I let us all down? What if I don't live up to everyone's expectations?" Sarah leaned in, her heart aching for him. "Everyone has fears, Daniel. It's normal, but you've made real progress and we're all here for you." He pressed, his voice weak. "You won't. And if you stumble, we'll be right there to help you get back up," she reassured him, squeezing his shoulder gently. Just then Mark stepped in, joining their conversation. "What's this about stumbling? You're on a trajectory, Daniel. You've come so far." The two of them watched as realization slowly washed over him. It was as if a veil had lifted, revealing newfound clarity. "You're right, I have to trust the process," he said, and for the first time he smiled genuinely. As time went on, the hotel continued to thrive, becoming a pillar of the community. Guests raved about their experiences, and word spread about the beautiful transformation taking place. They hosted events, local artists showcased their work, and the once declining establishment bloomed into a vibrant haven. Then came the event of the summer, a community art festival hosted at the hotel, a vibrant celebration of creativity. The gardens filled with colorful installations, musicians played lively tunes, and laughter spilled into every corner. Sarah found herself overwhelmed with joy as she watched the crowd embrace the space. It was a testament to everything they had built together. She caught Daniel in the center, animatedly talking to a group of children, his earlier doubts washed away. As dusk settled, painting the sky with pink and orange hues, she walked over to congratulate him. She said, nudging him playfully, "It's thanks to you and Mark. I wouldn't have believed in myself without your support," he replied, his smile stretching ear to ear. The evening thrummed on, filled with joy and creativity, but as they reveled in the success, Sarah felt a familiar pang of worry gnaw at her. Despite the bright lights, would the shadows return to haunt Daniel? She hoped the light they had created would be enough to keep fear at bay. Later that night, when the last guests departed and the party dwindled down, Daniel found Sarah alone in the garden, lost in thought beneath the stars. he asked, his voice cutting through her silence. I'm just thinking about how far we've come, but I can't shake the feeling that we're not finished yet. I worry about you, she admitted, vulnerability breaking the surface. That's sweet, but I'm doing well, truly, he replied, stepping closer. She felt the warmth in his words, and yet doubt lingered. Just promise me you'll keep being open. I promise, he said, sincerity washing over him. I have you and Mark. As they stood together beneath the night sky, hope flickered brightly. The resilience they had built kept the shadows at bay, and together they would continue to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Weeks turned into a month, and as the season changed, so did the hotel. It became a central hub of the community, each corner alive with creativity. Even the garden had become a sanctuary, filled with vibrant flowers and laughter. But in the back of her mind, Sarah felt a nagging worry. She had invested so much of her soul in this hotel, but as things flourished, could they keep it going? Would they be able to sustain this new identity? Then, just when everything seemed perfect, more storms gathered on the horizon. One evening, as she and Mark brainstormed plans for the upcoming winter season, Daniel stepped in, his face serious. The air shifted as they looked up. Mark asked, concern etching his brow. I've been thinking about my past. There are things I still need to deal with. I know I made progress, but the idea of facing it scares me, he said, vulnerability flooding his tone. Mark nodded, understanding the weight of those words. You don't have to go through this alone, let us help. Sarah stood beside him, placing a hand on his back. You have us. Daniel looked at them, the fear in his eyes softening. You're right. In that moment, Sarah felt the storm inside him begin to calm. They began to discuss a plan, how he could gradually face his fears, how the hotel could help him heal. It wasn't going to be easy, but together they could navigate the tide. As autumn leaves fell, they carried the weight of their plan forward. They allocated time for vulnerability among the three of them, building a strong foundation of trust. They held workshops, community support sessions, and even created a safe space for discussions about mental health. Daniel began to face his battles slowly but surely, with Sarah and Mark standing by his side. The shadows of his past didn't disappear overnight, but they grew smaller with each brave step he took. The hotel became a refuge, not just for travelers, but for people battling their own storms. They found solace in vulnerability, creativity, and support, transforming not only their lives, but also their community. 1 year later, they celebrated their anniversary, the hotel alive with joy and laughter. The journey hadn't been without challenges, but standing there together, they felt electric. As they watched guests mingling in the garden, their laughter filled the air. Sarah found a sense of peace settled within her. They hadn't just built a hotel, they had created a home, a sanctuary for healing, laughter, and dreams. We did it, she whispered to Daniel and Mark, pride swelling in her. Together, they echoed, smiles stretching across their faces. And under the stars, amidst the blooming flowers and beaming laughter, they felt a sense of belonging that would carry them through whatever storms lay ahead. They had turned vulnerability into strength, fears into resilience, and fears into light. At Old Hotel by the Sea, hope thrived, reminding all who walked through its doors that sometimes all it takes is a little faith and a whole lot of love to turn a life around. Rain drummed heavily against the windows of the old seaside hotel, each drop sounding like the heartbeat of a place that had seen better days. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of damp wood and spent candles, remnants of a day-long storm. Sarah stood behind the reception desk, absently tapping a pen and peering out into the gloom. The light from the desk lamp cast shadows that flickered against the faded wallpaper, a reminder of the faded glory of Willow Creek Hotel. Suddenly, the bell above the door chimed, and in walked a drenched figure. It was Daniel, his hair plastered to his forehead, clothes clinging to him as he shook off the rain like a startled bird. But it wasn't just the rain that made him look disheveled. It was the look on his face, a wild mix of anxiety and desperation. He exclaimed, stepping closer, his voice urgent. Her heart raced. Daniel had always been a familiar face in the hotel, someone who drifted in and out with ease, but today there was something more urgent in his eyes. She asked, her brow furrowing. I need a room for the night, he said, urgency lacing his words. Just one night. The color drained from Sarah's face. She had a strict policy about single-night stays in the busy season. It was supposed to be a matter of practicality, a guideline to keep the hotel afloat amidst the rising tide of expenses. I'm sorry, Daniel, she said, trying to keep her voice steady, but you know the rules. Rules, this is serious. He clenched his fists, frustration bubbling over. I really need to think. Her stomach twisted. She wanted to help him, but she couldn't. I get it, and I'm really sorry. He stared at her for a beat, eyes wide with disbelief, and then turned sharply, making his way back into the storm. The door closed softly behind him, and Sarah felt a pang of regret lashing at her heart. Each drop of rain outside seemed to echo his disappointment. She glanced out the window, the storm reflecting her inner turmoil. She had witnessed Daniel's struggles before, saw how life had dealt him harsh cards, but she had still adhered to the rules, believing those rules protected the fragile stability of the hotel. Heart heavy, she turned away from the door, trying to push aside the responsibility that clung to her like the dampness in the air. Hours passed slowly, the rain continuing to pour, each minute stretching into the next. As she cleaned and tidied up the lobby, her phone buzzed, a new message from an old friend. But just then the bell jingled again. This time a tall man in an immaculate suit walked in. He exuded an aura of confidence and charm, a certain energy that seemed to fill the room. He announced, a smile lighting up his face. Caught off guard, Sarah hesitated. "I'm afraid we're fully booked," she replied, glancing at the clock. The storm had kept most people away, but now something felt off. "No, you're not," he answered confidently, leaning slightly against the counter. "My name is Mark Thompson." Her heart stopped momentarily. "You, absolutely, I saw its potential and couldn't resist. I think we can make something wonderful here," he said with conviction. "Wait, what does that mean for the staff?" Her mind swirled with questions. Had she just denied the request of the new owner? "It means there's a chance for you to stay and be part of something exciting." He replied, his enthusiasm a stark contrast to the dark clouds outside. Just then her phone buzzed again, cutting through her racing thoughts. "Excuse me," she said, grabbing it from the counter. It was a message from the very person she had just turned away, Daniel. "Sarah, please, I need to talk to you," she asked, glancing back at Mark, whose curious eyes seemed to dance with curiosity. "I'm just outside," Daniel replied. "Of course," she urged, feeling the weight of her earlier decision pressing down like a storm cloud. Moments felt like hours until the door swung open again and Daniel stepped inside. He looked worn, the features of his face etched with exhaustion, but something had shifted. "I'm sorry for storming out earlier," he said quietly, glancing between Sarah and Mark. "I'm Mark," the new owner introduced himself, extending a hand. Daniel asked, confusion flickering across his face. "Yeah. It's a beautiful place and I believe we can turn it into something special," Mark replied with an energy that seemed contagious. Daniel hesitated, then looked back at Sarah, vulnerability creeping back into his eyes. "I came back because I really need a place to figure it all out." Mark's gaze softened as he looked at Daniel. "Why don't we help each other? A person with your experiences could add so much. I don't know. I feel like I've let so many people down," Daniel admitted, insecurity lacing his tone. "Look, we're all here for a reason," Mark said firmly. Silence fell as Daniel pondered Mark's words. Sarah watched the conflict on his face, a mixture of desperation and hope. "All right," he finally said, determination returning to his voice. With those words, a new chapter began. As they gathered around the counter, ideas flowed like water rushing through a dam bursting at the seams. Together they began to brainstorm. Days quickly turned into weeks and the hotel transformed. The once dilapidated walls received fresh coats of paint, the garden bloomed with vibrant colors, and laughter began to fill the empty halls. Sarah felt a spark reignite within her as she watched Daniel find his rhythm. He poured his heart into the cafe, sharing stories and laughter with guests. It was variously healing, both for him and for the hotel. One sunny afternoon, Sarah caught Daniel by the garden, humming to himself as he pruned the roses. "You know, I didn't think I could feel this alive again," he said, a genuine smile illuminating his face. She felt joy swell within her. "You're finding your place here." As the hotel's revival continued, this little sanctuary began drawing in more guests, many returning to tell their friends about the warm atmosphere and welcoming staff. The previous emptiness felt like a distant memory. Yet even as things flourished, Daniel sometimes quietly wrestled with shadows from his past. One evening during a community gathering at the hotel, she found him sitting alone, gazing at the crowd. She asked, sliding onto the bench beside him. His voice trailed off, eyes lost in the distance. She turned to face him, concerned. "About whether I'll ever truly get past my mistakes," he admitted, shame creeping into his tone. "None of us are perfect. We all have ghosts bothering us. But it's how we face them that matters," she said, her heart aching for him. His eyes met hers, searching for reassurance. "But what if I mess everything up again?" "You won't," she said firmly. "You've come so far already, and we're all in this together." He sighed, the weight of his worries reflected in every line of his face. "I'm trying, really." The moment lingered on, and Sarah felt a quiet strength building between them. "Just remember this, you have a community now." As the weeks rolled on and the seasons began to shift, the hotel became even more vibrant. Local artists showcased their talents, musicians filled the corners with melodies, and laughter echoed through the hallways. But then came the unexpected news. The town had voted to cut funding for local arts programs, and the beloved community center was facing closure. A wave of panic washed over everyone. The heart of their neighborhood was at risk of disappearing. One evening, as Sarah, Daniel, and Mark gathered in the hotel lobby, the weight of the news hung heavy in the air. Sarah asked, her voice full of concern. "We can't let this happen," Mark said, determination flashing in his eyes. Daniel sat quietly, contemplating the gravity of the situation. "But how? We're just a hotel." "More than you know," Sarah assured him. "We could host benefits, raise money." Slowly, hope began to rekindle in Daniel's eyes. "All right, let's do it." "Yes, together," Mark emphasized, the resolve in his voice building. Days turned into frantic planning sessions. The hotel buzzed as they organized events, a massive fundraising gala, community art fairs, and open mic nights. They put up posters, reached out to local businesses, and invited everyone to participate. The sense of urgency propelled them forward, breathing life back into their community spirit. As the date approached for the first fundraising event, excitement mingled with nerves coursed through Sarah. The night was filled with laughter, the hotel bustling with life. Her heart swelled as she watched Daniel confidently interact with guests, fully embracing his role, his earlier doubts vanishing into thin air. But just when everything felt perfect, the skies turned dark. The storm that had once threatened their hotel returned, each raindrop pounding against the roof like a chorus of discontent. The echoes blended with thunder, slicing through the evening, creating an atmosphere fraught with anxiety. Then, in the midst of it all, disaster struck. As wind howled outside, one of the windows shattered under the pressure, sending shards of glass flying. Guests gasped and panic surged through the crowd. The room erupted into chaos, the laughter and music fading into screams. Sarah's heart raced as she turned to see Daniel freeze in place, his eyes wide with fear. Without thinking, she raced toward the broken window to assess the damage. She shouted over the rising clamor, adrenaline pulsing through her veins. Daniel's voice rang out, tinged with panic as he grasped her arm. As glass crunched beneath their feet and the wind lashed against them, she glanced over her shoulder to see Mark directing the guests toward the exit. "We'll figure this out." The storm had returned with a vengeance, but so had their strength. As they led the guests to safety, determination surged within Sarah. Together, they had faced challenges before. This would be another test, but they would overcome. She yelled, her heart pounding in rhythm with the thunder. As they ushered the last of the guests outside, a deafening crash echoed in the darkness, and she turned just in time to see another window explode, the rain pouring in like a flood. She called, but the sight before her had frozen him in place. The hotel, once a haven, was becoming a battleground against nature's fury, and as the storm raged around them, they stood united, but would they have the strength to rebuild from the chaos that loomed? In that moment, Sarah knew everything was on the line. What they had built together was about to be tested, and the bonds they shared would either shatter or rise anew. Would they emerge from the storm as champions, or would the tempest destroy everything they had worked so hard to achieve? The rain poured relentlessly, and as Sarah looked into Daniel's eyes, she realized their journey was just beginning.